A girl accidentally applied to a company of assassins. Initially, she was unaware and actively promoted herself until the CEO revealed the truth. Kanako realized she was at an assassin organization's interview. She thought of leaving, but stayed upon hearing the starting annual salary of $600,000, 9-to-5 workdays, weekends off, social security, pension contributions, and overtime pay. She agreed without hesitation. 5 minutes into her job, the CEO ordered her to kill her first target without any training. Kanako refused, but the CEO calmly disclosed her past and the reason she was job hunting. He knew of the workplace bullying she endured at her previous advertising job for 3 years, so he purposely saved this target for her. The target was her former bullying boss. Without hesitation, Kanako shot him dead. Surprised by her natural skill, the CEO celebrated her welcome party that night. Kanako reveled in the thrill, noting the beer tasted exceptionally good after her kill. However, she regretted her actions the next day, realizing she couldn't treat it as a career or tell her family. She prepared to resign, but was swayed by the CEO's praise, the first she'd received in years. Kanako forgot her initial purpose, happily taking her seat at work, but regained some sense upon seeing the office supplies in her drawer. However, the CEO didn't give her a chance to react and immediately handed her today's task. This target was no ordinary young man, but a scoundrel who had harmed many female college students. Upon hearing this, Kanako didn't hesitate and switched to assassin mode. This time, instead of a gun, the CEO provided her with an injection that could stop a heart. After Kanako set out, the boss sent another employee to secretly monitor her, worried that her previous success might have been a fluke and prepared to eliminate both Kanako and the target if she failed. As expected, Kanako regretted her action again, considering the young man's potential future and chance for redemption. However, as she passed by the target, he brazenly rated his own looks in front of her, prompting Kanako to activate assassin mode without giving him a chance to react. Thanks to the clever injection site, onlookers were distracted by the target falling down the stairs and didn't notice Kanako. After completing the task, Kanako immediately messaged the CEO and went home early. She received a package of local specialties from her mother, improving her mood, and called her. Her mother was surprised to receive a call at that time and noticed her daughter sounded much happier. Kanako admitted to her mother that she had switched to a much easier job that she was very good at. The next evening, the CEO suddenly informed Kanako to assist another employee, Sakurai, with a task at an underground casino. However, due to her excessive talking, Sakurai repeatedly warned her to stay quiet, or he would take her down too. Unlike Kanako, Sakurai was a very professional assassin, impressing with his decisive actions. To avoid troubling Sakurai, Kanako used her workplace-honed skill of blending in, silently staying behind him until the task was completed. So engrossed was Sakurai that he didn't notice her presence. Once everything was over, she made her presence felt again. Sakurai seemed less adverse to her presence, as long as she didn't bother him. But Kanako was bothered by his stern demeanor and worried she might have upset him. Although untrained in brawling, she knew she could handle one-on-one confrontations. While contemplating this, she pulled out her gun to mimic actions. Sakurai, sensing something odd, turned to confirm but saw only her innocent eyes. Somewhat resigned, he suppressed his discomfort and returned to the car. On the way back, Kanako couldn't stand the silence and felt like she might suffocate. She tentatively started praising Sakurai, who remained unresponsive. Then she switched tactics, asking him which girl group member he liked. Sakurai, tired of her chatter, was about to tell her to shut up when a car, likely sent by the casino to chase them, caught up. Calmly, Sakurai handed the gun to Kanako, who immediately responded. Sakurai gained a new appreciation for his unconventional partner, wondering where the CEO found such an eccentric. Kanako was increasingly adapting to her job, boosted by encouraging messages from her boss. One day on her way to work, she encountered two despicable individuals. One was a blogger who faked buying expired food that made him sick, recorded a confrontation with a store clerk, and then posted it online to extort money from the convenience store. The other was a lecherous man who not only liked to grope on the subway but also mocked Kanako when caught, saying she had nothing worth touching, and loudly demeaned women who go out with children. No longer willing to remain silent, Kanako immediately reported her desire to kill these men to the CEO, noting they harm many daily and are of no use. However, the CEO stated their organization was not a charity and they do not take jobs that don't pay. Kanako found no argument against this and lost her motivation. Even her appetite vanished. Later, alone on the rooftop, Sakurai, having finished his meal, advised Kanako to quit the job. However, Kanako, who thinks differently, took this as encouragement. She interpreted it to mean if she still wanted to kill, she shouldn't wallow in self-pity, but should strive to secure murder contracts through her own abilities. Rejuvenated by this imagined encouragement, she decided to create her own opportunities, reasoning that such individuals must have repeatedly offended and someone would pay to deal with them. Ultimately, due to Kanako's persistence, she secured a contract to kill the complaining man, a situation that somewhat frightened both of them. That evening, Kanako arrived at the complainer's house armed with both an injectable and gas. Unsure which to use first, she considered asking Sakurai for advice. However, overhearing the man extorting the convenience store from earlier, Kanako instantly switched to assassin mode. Forgetting the sequence, she decided that any method that could eliminate the man would suffice. As she released the gas and entered the house, she ran into the man lighting a cigarette, resulting in a fiery explosion. Although Kanako returned to the company unharmed, the CEO scolded her for the commotion that shattered nearby windows and attracted media coverage. The CEO sighed and told her to go home and rest. Feeling down, Kanako unexpectedly met Kiyomi, a middle school classmate. Despite years of not seeing each other, Kiyomi invited her for a drink. Though they were classmates, they weren't close, and Kanako wanted to decline but couldn't find the words, so she reluctantly agreed. While Kiyomi appeared vibrant, she shared similar frustrations. As a middle school teacher, her students wouldn't listen, making her efforts seem counterproductive, and they often spoke ill of her, leading Kiyomi to blame herself. Kanako deeply related to this, as her own experiences were remarkably similar. In reality, Kiyomi didn't intend for their meeting to be negative. She hoped they could drink together more often, admiring Kanako's unique spirit of perseverance, which she felt could inspire others to strive similarly. Kiyomi's words encouraged Kanako, reigniting her fighting spirit. Sakurai was also moved by Kanako and decided to help her deal with the sleazy troublemaker. He told Kanako to act when there were fewer people around, but the subway is always crowded, especially during rush hours. Noticing a man already harassing a female student nearby, Kanako's assassin instincts kicked in again. Once feeling helpless in similar situations, she used to doubt herself when faced with adversity. Now, she refused to let such things happen without intervention. Sakurai did not stop her, but asked if she could remain unseen in a crowded place. For Kanako, this was no issue. She discreetly positioned her gun against the man's back. Sakurai then moved the man to a seat, where he appeared to be sleeping, unnoticed by others. By the time they returned to the office, the incident was already being reported online. According to passengers, no gunshot was heard, but the police were intensifying their investigation, planning to use surveillance footage to aid their inquiry. Knowing Kanako had killed again, Sakurai took all the blame to protect her from criticism. The CEO was distressed about how to handle Kanako, thinking her career might be over. However, he handed her a gun, revealing that not only Sakurai, but also he had been influenced by her spirit. For years, the job was merely a means of survival for him until Kanako's enthusiasm made it enjoyable, and he was willing to pay for this pleasure, taking on any risks. Employees like Kanako should be valued. As they were absorbed in this touching moment, a series of deaths had already caught the attention of the Criminal Investigation Department. Though the police concluded the first death as a suicide, many suspicions arose. The victim was a notorious workplace bully who had driven subordinates to mental illness or even suicide, making him widely hated. The victims in the other two cases were also disreputable, leading investigators to suspect a professional assassin's involvement. Meanwhile, the suspected assassin was watching a children's action show, practicing gun skills along with the animated characters, and aspiring to be a force for justice. Kanako, a novice, unexpectedly became a legend in the assassin world. Even the mob boss became her client. She invested a lot in finding the assassin. Kanako herself never anticipated that casually eliminating a few scoundrels would make her a sensation among assassins. Curious about the rumors, she searched all major social platforms, but found no information about Assassin K. She then decided to inquire from someone within the industry. During a mission, she met a talkative-looking man who was clueless about her identity. Kanako urged him to recall the recent subway murder covered by the news. The man, busy with overtime work, hadn't seen the news, disappointing Kanako. Just as she was about to shoot him, he seemed to grasp her thoughts and recalled the incident, pleasing Kanako. However, the man didn't know what to say next. After several reminders, he finally gave a satisfactory answer. Before he could rejoice, Kanako wanted to hear his opinion on K. Though clueless, his blind praise seemed safe. Delighted, Kanako asked him to elaborate on the assassin's skills. The man imagined a strong, rugged man, but Kanako's impatient expression suggested he was wrong. Guessing she might be a female assassin, he remarked she was cute, which seemed to confirm his guess. Relieved, the man thought he had saved his life, but Kanako then crouched beside him and revealed she was Kei. As he began to suspect something was off, he was shot by Sakurai. Kanako was somewhat famous among assassins and quite enjoyed the vanity it brought. While basking in this joy, she received a strange call, asking her to visit the police station the next day to give a statement. Despite her exceptional assassination skills, Kanako was just an ordinary person with a weak mental fortitude. Unexpectedly, Takahara, the officer questioning her, fell for her at first sight. The interrogation barely touched on the case and focused more on Kanako's hobbies, turning the session into a bizarre matchmaking scene. Kanako sensed something was off and thought Takahara might be using interrogation tactics on her. She vowed to stay alert. A female officer, unable to bear the scene, asked Takahara to step aside and took over. Kanako, suspecting a good cop bad cop scenario, thought her assassin identity was compromised. The female colleague asked where she was when her previous boss died. Trembling, Kanako said she was at home watching Killer Squad. Seeing the officer's incredulous look, Kanako panicked, thinking her end was near and wondering if confessing might reduce her sentence. She admitted to the crime. The female officer was stunned, and Takahara, who was behind her, laughed. His laughter was because Kanako's statement was a line from the TV show, proving she was indeed at home that day. It seemed Kanako had managed to bluff her way through. The female officer was speechless at Takahara's lovesick behavior and suggested he restrain himself. However, Takahara was thrilled to meet someone with the same hobbies. He planned a meetup at the weekend Killer Squad fan event, which Kanako usually attended. Despite feeling out of place among groups of children, Kanako spotted an even more conspicuous figure. Takahara had orchestrated this encounter. He asked if she was free for a meal. Kanako, feeling troubled, made an excuse to leave, fearing the police might still suspect her. Takahara noticed her concerns and decided to be upfront, inviting her out. Overwhelmed and realizing the professional mismatch, Kanako was still excited about her first confession and agreed to the date. To prepare, she consulted her friend Kiyomi, who suggested buying new clothes or losing weight. Despite finding it odd, Kanako followed the advice but struggled at the gym, quickly running out of breath on the treadmill, explaining her difficulties in chasing targets during missions. She pleaded with Sakurai for professional training, not wanting to lag in future missions. Sakurai, unsympathetic and tough, didn't treat her gently, emphasizing restraint. After days of rigorous training, Kanako was bruised all over. On the day before her date with Takahara, Sakurai insisted on removing the protective gear. Kanako needed to protect her face at all costs, but Sakurai's punches seemed to aim right at her. To avoid getting seriously beaten by Sakurai, Kanako had to instinctively dodge left and right. Although it was clumsy, she managed to get through the day's rigorous training. It seemed that Sakurai had eased up on her, but the boss noticed that Sakurai was a bit withdrawn, as every punch he threw was serious, yet never hit Kanako. Sakurai thought it was just a coincidence, doubting anyone could improve so quickly. While Sakurai was downcast, the boss was visibly delighted. However, on the eve of her date with Takehara, Kanako and Sakurai received a sudden notice to work overtime. Their task was simple: covertly ensure a mob boss's transaction went smoothly. Distracted by thoughts of her evening plans, Kanako was not fully focused, but she hoped the task wouldn't take long. Just as Kanako was distracted, Sakurai spotted a sniper arranged by the opposing party. Almost simultaneously, the enemy sniper, using the reflection from Kanako's manicure, took a shot. Sakurai shielded Kanako from this deadly bullet, urging her to escape with the mob boss while he was incapacitated. Realizing fighting back was futile, Sakurai's breath grew weaker, yet he still worried about her safety. Feeling guilty for causing trouble, Kanako tried to stop the bleeding, but it was in vain. Convinced that Sakurai was doomed, she decided that the enemy must pay. Thinking they had eliminated the main threat, the enemy sniper relaxed and stood up, aiming at the mob boss, unaware of Kanako silently approaching from behind. Before the enemy leader could react, Kanako shot him dead. In a furious rampage, she quickly eliminated all the remaining enemies. Fortunately, the bullet did not hit any vital parts of Sakurai. The doctor said he would be fine with a few days of rest. However, Kanako felt very guilty about the incident. She sincerely apologized to Sakurai, acknowledging that her distraction had almost cost her senior his life. Naturally, the day's events also affected her date with Takahara that evening. Already out of the mood, Kanako planned to cancel the date but didn't know how to refuse him. A familiar yet unfamiliar voice came from behind her. Sakurai's appearance surprised Kanako. He pulled her close, declaring, "Don't think about touching my woman." Due to her exceptional performance in protecting the mob transaction, rumors of Kei single-handedly fighting against many spread throughout the assassin community. Powers throughout Japan wanted to find this mysterious assassin. The boss felt Kanako was too conspicuous. Being targeted by both the underworld and law enforcement was not good, as it could lead to fatal consequences. He suggested she go home for a while to lay low. The boss thoughtfully bought her a train ticket home. Arriving at her seat, Kanako was surprised and delighted to find Sakurai there. The boss had texted her that Sakurai would be responsible for her safety on her journey home. They hadn't spoken much since that night, and the atmosphere was a bit awkward. With a 2.5-hour journey ahead, maintaining this awkwardness would be uncomfortable. Kanako wanted to ask what Sakurai meant by his statement that night, but she felt sure the answer would probably be, "I'll kill you." Sakurai told Kanako not to overthink it. His words that night were simply meant to help her escape police scrutiny. Kanako awkwardly acknowledged she understood, insisting she knew Sakurai had no need to explain. The more she tried to emphasize her understanding, the more awkward she appeared. On the other side, Takahara, heartbroken, chose to numb himself with work. He analyzed a subway murder case where the victim was a notorious molester, a common enemy to all women. This led Takahara to hypothesize that the mysterious assassin Kei might be a female. Unbeknownst to them, their police station conversation was overheard by a petty thug who was also looking for Kei Kanako, who hadn't been home in a long time. First paid respects to her late father upon returning. As she anticipated, her mother immediately inquired about her work and love life. To divert from these sensitive topics, Kanako asked her mother if she ever felt lonely at home alone. Surprisingly, her mother blushed and revealed she had learned to use the internet and met a man named Jeff who loved Japanese culture. Excited, she showed Kanako his photo. Kanako quickly analyzed Jeff's social media activities and suspected he might be an international romance scammer. Her mother, however, thought Kanako was just being overly suspicious, which is why she couldn't find a boyfriend. She insisted that Jeff, a reputed hospital director, was beyond reproach. Yet Kanako remained convinced Jeff was a fraud, but couldn't prove it to her mother. She ended up venting to Sakurai, who showed little interest in her family matters as he was focused on eating after a long day of hunger. The next morning, her mother was curious why Kanako, despite having her own room, chose to sleep in the living room. Kanako explained that she got so engrossed in reading manga that she accidentally fell asleep. Realizing her nearly 30-year-old daughter was still as obsessed with manga as a high schooler, her mother suggested that if she was bored, she might as well go for a walk. Just then, the park's loudspeaker below started the hourly chime. Kanako remembered she had to feed Sakurai today, otherwise he might actually kill her. After breakfast, she took Sakurai for a walk nearby. They visited the commercial street of her childhood, the barber shop they often frequented, and the manga store across from it. Her father used to buy the latest chapters of Detective Conan there. Kanako thought all boys must have read Detective Conan and would share her enthusiasm, but surprisingly, Sakurai had never seen it. To introduce him to this masterpiece, she brought out the entire collection from her home. While Sakurai was engrossed in the comics, Kanako, feeling a bit bored, decided to buy some drinks at a nearby store. By chance, she ran into an old high school classmate she hadn't seen in 8 years. The classmate greeted her warmly and suggested they meet up sometime. Kanako felt both awkward and constrained in response. That evening, while feeding Sakurai, Kanako opened up about her day. She revealed that the classmate had bullied her in high school, which once made her so fearful of school that she had to take a break. It surprised her that this person could act as if nothing had happened and approach her so casually. Recalling those days still left a lingering psychological shadow, though she spoke of these past events with a smile. Sakurai noticed the mix of anger and resentment in her tone and suggested killing him. Faced with Sakurai's suggestion, Kanako hesitated for a long time, but decided to forgive her classmate, which was also a way of letting go for herself. Seeing her response, Sakurai did not continue the conversation. He stood up, noting that the town seemed very safe now, and decided to return to Tokyo to continue working. Kanako wanted to return with Sakurai, but he suggested she quit her job, clearly feeling they were not cut from the same cloth. Back at home, Kanako hesitated before finally opening her bedroom door. She had preferred sleeping in the living room to avoid the painful memories that filled her own room. During a period of bullying, she had often thought of ending her life in that room but lacked the courage. Instead, she used self-hypnosis, imagining herself as a ghost, which gave her the courage to return to school. Before becoming an assassin, she felt her existence was superfluous and often wanted to end her own life. In her mind, she had killed herself numerous times. Now, Kanako felt like she had found a new way to live, realizing she didn't need to punish herself for others' mistakes. Reconciling with her past left her feeling relieved. Just as she was thinking of an excuse to return to work in Tokyo, a foreigner spoke to her in fluent Japanese, asking for directions. Surprised, Kanako realized her mother's romantic relationship was progressing quickly. Jeff had traveled all the way from the United States. Meanwhile, the boss texted her that Sakurai's investigation found Jeff to be genuine and trustworthy. Returning to Tokyo, Kanako didn't bring any special gifts for Sakurai, only her complete collection of Detective Conan manga. Love not only makes a woman more beautiful, but also younger. Kanako's mother had recently taken up live streaming, and seeing her happiness made Kanako smile. However, beneath this warm atmosphere, a gun was silently pressed against Kanako's back.